Today, we're all about habits. You know, those small actions that can really shape our lives in big ways. We're diving into James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to understand how those tiny changes can, create these remarkable results.
Yeah, so we're talking about those small, seemingly insignificant things we do every day.
Exactly, and how those things really add up over time.
So, we're unpacking the core principles from Atomic Habits.
And we're turning them into these tools that you can use right away.
Okay, so one of the things that caught my eye in the book was the story of British cycling. They went from being kind of an underdog to dominating the sport.
Yeah, how'd they do that?
That's what I want to know.
Well, they use this idea called marginal gains.
A marginal gain.
Yeah, it's this idea that small improvements, like as small as 1%, can compound into these huge results over time.
So instead of trying to overhaul your whole life, you focus on making small incremental improvements each day.
Exactly. British cycling focused on everything. They optimized their bikes, their training regimens. They even found the best pillows for each athlete to improve their sleep.
They even painted the inside of their team truck white to spot dust and optimize bike maintenance.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. They went from winning just one Olympic gold medal in almost a century
Wow.
to winning a whopping 60% of the gold medals available at both the 2008 and 2012 Olympics.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting for our listeners. Imagine applying this to your own life, learning a new language.
Okay.
Instead of feeling overwhelmed by this huge task, focus on mastering 5 new words each day.
Okay, so small, manageable chunks.
Exactly. And those small wins compound. Before you know it, you're having full-blown conversations.
That's a great point. It's like building a brick wall, one brick at a time. Now, Clear also talks about systems being more important than goals.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, so think of it this way. Goals are the destination, right? But systems are the roadmap that gets you there.
Okay.
Winners and losers often share the same goals,
Right.
but it's the systems, the consistent habits and actions that differentiate them.
So it's not enough to just say, I want to lose weight or I want to write a book. You need to create a system that supports those goals.
You got it. It's about building those daily habits and routines that will actually help you achieve those long-term objectives.
So for instance, if your goal is to write a book, your system might involve writing for a specific amount of time each day, regardless of how you feel.
Exactly. It's about showing up consistently.
So how do we actually go about building these systems? How do we form those good habits? And just as importantly, how do we break the bad ones?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Clear lays out this framework called the 4 stages of habit formation.
Okay.
And it all starts with a cue, a trigger that tells your brain to initiate a behavior.
So the smell of freshly baked cookies making you crave a treat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That smell is the cue. And it triggers the second stage, craving. This is like the motivational force behind the habit. It's not the cookie itself you crave, but the feeling of satisfaction it brings.
Right. Okay. And then comes the response, the actual behavior, reaching for that cookie.
You got it. And finally, the reward, the satisfying feeling that reinforces the entire loop, making you more likely to repeat the behavior the next time you smell those cookies.
So this whole cycle, cue, craving, response, reward, we can actually use it to understand our own habits, like coffee, for instance.
Okay, yeah, how would that work?
Well, the cue might be waking up. The craving is that feeling of alertness. The response is making and drinking the coffee. And the reward is that boost of energy.
Perfect example. And once you understand your own habit loops, you can start manipulating them to your advantage. Clear calls this the 4 laws of behavior change.
Okay.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
So make it obvious means making the cues for good habits more prominent. I love the example Clear uses about Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam.
Oh yeah, what was that?
They reduced bathroom cleaning costs simply by placing fly stickers in the urinals.
Really?
The stickers provided a target, which led to less spillage.
Wow.
It's crazy what a tiny change can do.
Yeah, and think about applying that to your own life. If you want to exercise more, leave your running shoes by the door. Want to read more? Put a book on your bedside table.
Simple yet effective. Okay, so what about making habits attractive?
Well, this is all about reframing your mindset. We're more likely to stick with habits that we actually enjoy. So instead of dreading your workout, focus on how good you'll feel afterwards.
Oh, that post-exercise endorphin rush.
Exactly. It's like choosing to get to exercise instead of having to.
I like that.
And make it easy means reducing friction. And making good habits the path of least resistance.
And this is where Clear's 2-minute rule comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Tell me about it.
So the idea is to break down habits into their simplest form. So instead of trying to run a marathon, start by just putting on your running shoes. Want to write a book? Just start by writing one sentence.
So it's about making that initial step so easy that it's almost impossible to say no.
Yeah. Okay, what about making a habit satisfying?
Well, our brains are wired to seek out rewards, right? So it's about making those good habits enjoyable and intrinsically rewarding. A simple example is using like a luxurious scented hand soap to make hand washing more appealing.
Leading to better hygiene.
Yeah, potentially.
It's all about positive reinforcement.
Yeah, got it.
So it sounds like these four laws are really about understanding the psychology behind our actions and then using that knowledge to our advantage.
You got it. And they work in reverse for breaking bad habits as well. But, I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about for now.
Welcome back. We're really getting into it now, dissecting all the wisdom from James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Yeah, we've talked about how those tiny changes can create a ripple effect.
Right.
The importance of systems.
The four laws of behavior change.
Yeah.
Now let's go even deeper.
All right, let's do it. One of the most interesting things Clear explores is this connection between habits and identity.
Okay.
It's not just about changing your actions, it's about changing your beliefs about yourself.
It's like deciding I'm not a smoker rather than I'm trying to quit smoking.
Exactly. Clear tells this great story about a man who struggled with nail biting for years.
Okay.
Nothing worked until he got a manicure. It was a simple action, but it shifted his identity.
How so?
He started thinking, I'm the type of person who takes care of their nails, not someone who bites them.
Right.
And guess what? The habit disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah, that's a powerful reminder that our habits are often reflections of our deeper beliefs about ourselves.
Absolutely.
If you want to change your habits, you might need to start by examining your identity.
Yeah, and Clear argues that every action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. So if you want to be a writer,
Right.
write. Each time you sit down and write, you're reinforcing that identity.
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
You act in accordance with your desired identity. And that, in turn, strengthens your belief in that identity.
You got it. Now let's talk about the brain chemistry behind habits.
Okay.
When we experience something pleasurable, our brains release dopamine.
Dopamine.
Yeah, a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in motivation and reward.
So it's like our brain giving us a high five for doing something it likes.
Exactly. And this dopamine rush reinforces the behavior that led to it making us more likely to repeat it in the future.
Okay.
That's the foundation of habit formation.
Right.
But here's the interesting part. We can actually leverage this knowledge to our advantage.
So instead of trying to fight our brain chemistry, we can work with it.
Absolutely. One way to do this is through what Clear calls temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling.
Yeah, it's the idea of pairing an action you want to do with an action you need to do. For example, you could only allow yourself to watch your favorite TV show while you're exercising.
So you're tricking your brain into associating something you have to do with something you want to do.
That's exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, so what are some other ways to boost that dopamine hit for good habits?
Well, Clear suggests creating a motivation ritual. This could be something as simple as listening to your favorite upbeat song before you start a task that you tend to procrastinate on.
So it's like giving yourself a little pep talk, but with music.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of positive reinforcement, Clear also talks about celebrating small wins.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
Yeah,
Our brains respond better to positive feedback than to negative feedback.
you got it.
So acknowledging and celebrating those small victories, no matter how insignificant they may seem, can really help us stay motivated and build that momentum.
Yeah, it's about recognizing those small steps forward,
Right.
giving ourselves credit for them.
And this all ties back to the idea of making habits satisfying. Right?
Absolutely. Now, up until now, we've been mostly focusing on these individual habits.
Right.
But Clear also applies these principles to teams and organizations.
Okay. Interesting.
He believes that good habits can create a culture of success.
He uses the example of the San Antonio Spurs, a basketball team with a long history of winning championships. What's their secret?
Well, the Spurs emphasize things like punctuality, hard work, and teamwork. These shared habits have become a part of their DNA, which leads to that consistent success.
So it's not just about individual talent, it's about the collective habits of the team. How can we apply this to our workplaces or even our families?
Well, Claire suggests setting those clear expectations, providing feedback and support, and of course, celebrating successes.
Right.
You can also create systems and processes that make good habits easier to follow.
Like checklists, templates, automated reminders.
You got it.
So it's about making those good habits the default option, both for ourselves and for the people around us.
Exactly.
Okay.
But let's not forget about breaking bad habits.
Yeah, that's a whole other challenge.
It's a different beast altogether.
Right.
Clear uses the concept of inversion.
Inversion.
Remember those 4 laws we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, for breaking bad habits, we flip them on their head.
Okay, walk me through this. So make it obvious becomes...
That invisible.
Make it invisible, okay.
If you're trying to quit snacking, hide those chips and cookies. Out of sight, out of mind.
Makes sense. And make it attractive
Makes it unattractive.
Make it unattractive. Okay.
Focus on the downsides of that bad habit. Think about how smoking stains your teeth, or how excessive social media use can interrupt your sleep.
So instead of focusing on that temporary pleasure, we shift our attention to the long-term consequences.
You got it.
Okay, so next, make it easy becomes...
Make it difficult.
Make it difficult.
Increase the friction. If you're trying to cut down on screen time, move those addictive apps to a less accessible folder on your phone, or even delete them altogether.
Okay. And finally, make it satisfying becomes...
Make it unsatisfying.
Make it unsatisfying.
One way to do this is by creating what's called a habit contract.
A habit contract.
It's like this written agreement that outlines the consequences of indulging in the bad habit. Having that accountability can make it less appealing.
That's a powerful tool.
It is, but here's a crucial point. Breaking bad habits requires a different kind of mental game.
Okay, how so?
You need to shift your mindset from indulgence to rejection.
So instead of trying to resist temptation, you actively push it away.
You got it. And don't get discouraged by slip-ups.
Right.
Setbacks are inevitable.
They happen.
Clear emphasizes patience and persistence.
Okay.
The key is to learn from those mistakes and get back on track.
Right.
Now on to another gem from Clear's toolbox.
Okay.
Habit stacking.
Habit stacking.
This is a simple concept, but it's incredibly effective.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
You basically link a new habit to an existing one. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will floss.
Okay.
Or after I finish my morning coffee, I will meditate for 5 minutes.
Ah, so you're creating a chain reaction of positive actions.
Exactly.
The completion of one habit triggers the next.
You got it. And this takes the guesswork out of habit building.
Yeah.
You're not relying on willpower or motivation. You're simply following this pre-established routine.
I like that a lot. So what are some tips for creating an effective habit stack?
Well, first, choose a trigger that's already deeply ingrained in your routine.
Like brushing your teeth.
Exactly. And be specific.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I will exercise more, say, after I get home from work, I will walk for 30 minutes.
So it's all about removing that ambiguity.
Right.
Making the action crystal clear.
Exactly.
Wow.
Now let's shift gears and talk about another powerful tool. Implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions.
Okay. I'm all ears.
These are specific if-then plans
Okay.
that outline when and where you'll perform a habit. For
Okay.
example, if it's 7:00 a.m., then I'll go for a run.
Okay.
Or if I feel stressed, then I will take 5 deep breaths.
So you're basically automating your good habits.
You got it.
No more decision-making, just action.
Precisely. And studies have shown that these implementation intentions significantly increase the likelihood of following through with our intentions.
It's all about removing those mental roadblocks.
And making that good behavior the default response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, while a lot of what we've discussed focuses on these individual actions,
Right.
Clears also highlights the influence of our environment.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right. Our surroundings shape our behavior.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Mm.
Clear cites a study by Dr. Ann Thorndike, who noticed that in the hospital, cafeteria soda was readily available,
Okay.
while water was less so. She changed the layout,
Mm.
made water more accessible. And guess what? Soda sales decreased and water sales increased.
It's amazing how a simple change in the environment can nudge people towards healthier choices.
That's the power of choice architecture.
Choice architecture.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Think about how grocery stores strategically place those tempting items at eye level or near the checkout lines.
Right. It's all about understanding how our environment influences our decisions and then using that knowledge to our advantage.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Now, while we can manipulate our surroundings to promote good habits, we also need to be mindful of how technology can hijack our good intentions.
It's a double-edged sword, right?
It is.
Technology can help us track our progress,
Stay motivated.
stay motivated, but it can also be incredibly distracting.
Absolutely, those notifications.
Oh, yeah.
Those endless scrolling feeds,
Mhm.
they're designed to keep us hooked.
Right.
We need to be mindful of those cues
Right.
that trigger our tech habits
Right.
and create those strategies to manage our relationship with technology.
So turning off notifications, setting time limits, and even strategically placing our devices out of sight
You got it.
can help us regain control. Okay, now let's talk about another crucial factor in habit formation: willpower.
Oh, willpower. That often elusive force that we rely on to resist temptation.
Right.
Does Clear have any insights on this?
Yeah, what does he say about this?
He makes a really important point.
Okay.
Willpower is a finite resource. We only have so much of it each day,
Hmm.
and it gets depleted as we use it.
So relying on willpower alone to build good habits or break bad ones is setting ourselves up for failure.
It's not a sustainable strategy.
Okay.
That's why Clear suggests making good habits as easy as possible to perform,
Okay.
reducing the amount of willpower required.
Right.
He also recommends removing temptations from your environment.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. Exactly.
So setting ourselves up for success by reducing that reliance on willpower, what about when we hit those inevitable bumps in the road?
Yeah.
How do we stay the course?
Clear emphasizes patience and persistence. He reminds us that change takes time.
Right.
Remember Jerry Seinfeld's "Don't break the chain" strategy?
Oh, yeah.
Every day, he wrote, he'd mark an X on his calendar.
Right.
His goal was to never break that chain of X's,
Right.
creating this visual representation of his consistency.
It's a great way to stay motivated and build momentum.
Yeah, and it highlights the importance of focusing on the process, not the outcome. Celebrate those small wins
Okay.
and learn from those setbacks. Now, let's pause here.
Okay.
Take a breath. We've covered a lot of ground,
Yeah, we have.
and there's still more to uncover.
Right.
In our final segment, we'll explore how to personalize these principles and tie everything together.
Welcome back to our final segment on atomic habits. We've covered so much ground, from the power of those tiny changes to the importance of systems and, the whole psychology behind our actions.
And all those great strategies for breaking bad habits,
Yeah.
and leveraging the power of our environment and technology.
Right. But now I'm really curious about how we take all this information and make it work for us, as individuals.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand the theory, but how do we actually apply these principles to create lasting change in our own lives?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
Well, Clear offers some great insights on personalizing these strategies. Remember how we talked about the link between habits and identity? Well, he kind of takes it a step further and suggests aligning our habits with our personalities.
So recognizing that a habit that works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. He uses the example of introverts and extroverts. An introvert might thrive on a habit of daily journaling, while an extrovert might find more satisfaction in joining a social club or volunteering in their community.
It's about understanding our natural tendencies and choosing habits that complement who we are at our core.
You got it. Forcing ourselves into habits that feel unnatural or draining is a recipe for failure.
Clear also encourages us to consider our skills and interests when choosing habits.
That's right. He suggests asking yourself a series of questions.
Okay, like what?
What feels like fun to me but work to others? What makes me lose track of time? Where do I get greater than average returns? What comes naturally to me?
These questions are all about identifying our strengths, our passions. It's like finding that sweet spot where our natural abilities and our interests intersect.
And that's where the magic happens. When we choose habits that align with our personalities, our skills, and interests, they become almost effortless.
Now, throughout this whole deep dive, I've been so struck by Clear's emphasis on the power of those small changes. It can be easy to get caught up in the idea that we need to make these drastic overhauls to see real results.
But Clear reminds us that it's the tiny improvements made consistently over time that lead to that lasting change. Remember the British cycling story and those marginal gains? It's all about focusing on those 1% improvements each day.
Those small wins can be deceivingly powerful.
Oh, yeah.
They compound over time, like interest in a savings account.
Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Before we know it, those seemingly insignificant changes add up to something extraordinary.
One of the things I appreciate most about Clear's approach is that he doesn't just offer theories. He backs up his ideas with scientific research and real-world examples.
Right. He shares stories of Olympic athletes, business leaders, artists, everyday people who have transformed their lives using these principles.
It makes it feel a lot more attainable, right?
Yeah, it makes these ideas feel accessible, achievable.
Absolutely. It shows that anyone can harness the power of good habits regardless of their background or circumstances. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's distill everything we've learned into a few key takeaways.
Okay, great.
First, building better habits is a journey, not a destination. It's a process of continuous improvement, not a one-time fix.
And don't try to change everything at once. Focus on making small, consistent changes over time. Remember, those tiny improvements compound into significant results.
Clear's 4 laws of behavior change are essential tools. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Use these to your advantage when you're building good habits and breaking bad ones.
Don't underestimate the power of tracking your progress and celebrating those successes. This will help you stay motivated and on track.
And remember, change takes time. Be patient and persistent. Setbacks are inevitable, but they don't have to derail your progress.
Most importantly, you have the power to choose your habits and shape your destiny. Don't let your bad habits define you. Build the habits that will help you become the best version of yourself.
That's all for this deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to create positive change in your own life.
Pick up a copy of Atomic Habits and start exploring. You might be surprised at what you can accomplish with the power of small changes. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.